faithfully convey value and interpret great books from around the world.
Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, I'll interpret for you a book titled Jinglei Youyan with the subtitle Strategic Analysis of Military Disasters in the Song-Liao War. Its author, Zhang Ruilong, was a renowned scholar of Song Dynasty military history. He served as an associate professor at CUHK's history department before his passing. Jinglu refers to strategic planning of Yuan, present-day Beijing and northern Hebei. Since the Five Dynasties era, this region had been controlled by the Liao Dynasty. Emperor Taizong of Song launched 2 northern campaigns to reclaim Youyan, both ending in disastrous failure. Afterwards, not only did recapturing Yuan become impossible, but Song also remained strategically inferior to Liao in their relationship. Traditional views cite 2 main reasons beyond Emperor Taizong's military shortcomings. Song's founding policies, like centralizing power while weakening regional forces, and prioritizing civil over military governance, including Taizong's famous cup of wine dismissal of generals. Another reason was Song's lack of strong cavalry, putting them at severe disadvantage in open field battles. But this book applies military strategy theory to show that strategy operates across multiple levels. Song's foundational policies and cavalry deficiency existed at different strategic levels. Neither alone could determine battlefield outcomes. The failure in managing Youyan stemmed not from problems at any single level, but from failures across all strategic dimensions. Now, I'll explain the historical process of Song's Yuan strategy through 4 parts. Part 1. How the Song-Liao confrontation began. Part 2. How 5 dynasties' military doctrines led to Song's disastrous defeat at Gaoliang River. Part 3. What caused Song's defeat in the Yangshi Northern Expedition. Part 4. How Song shifted to strategic defense, abandoning territorial recovery. First, Part 1. How the Song-Liao confrontation began. Historically, Song and Liao coexisted north-south for over a century. This confrontation began with the Shanzhou Agreement between Emperor Taizong and Liao. This agreement was deeply connected to both nations' grand strategies. First, let's examine Liao's grand strategy. The Khitan-established Liao Dynasty rose in northeast China and actively expanded into the Central Plains. During the 5 dynasties, Shi Jingtang, a later Tang general, rebelled. To secure Liao's support, he ceded 16 strategic border fortresses to them. These 16 regions later became collectively known as the 16 prefectures of Youyan. The 16 prefectures can be broadly divided into 3 geographical sectors. The first sector was Youyan region, east of Taihang Mountains, centered around present-day Beijing, the most strategically vital area among them. The second was Guanan region south of Youyan, in what's now Hebei's Shang'an New Area. The third was Yunzhou, region west of Taihang Mountains, centered around northern Shanxi and Datong. These 16 prefectures held immense strategic importance. To their north lay the Taihang Mountains' northern branches and Yan Mountains. For Central Plains dynasties, this formed a natural defensive barrier against northern nomads. Later, the Ming dynasty built its Great Wall along these ranges. By seizing the prefectures, especially Youyan, Liao bypassed this defensive line. Khitan cavalry could now sweep across the open North China Plain, reaching the Yellow River. Central Plains gates stood open. With Liao's support, Shi Jingtang established later Jin, replacing later Tang. After his death, Liao-Jin War erupted. Liao destroyed later Jin and occupied Central Plains, but unpopular rule forced quick withdrawal. Subsequent Central Plains regimes then attempted to reclaim the 16 prefectures. For example, in 959 AD, later Zhao, ruling Central Plains, launched northern expeditions, reclaiming Guanan, south of Yuan. Facing this situation, southward expansion became difficult. Liao had to reformulate grand strategy. abandoning conquest of Central Plains while focusing on long-term control of Youyan. To achieve this, Liao established Northern Han puppet state in central Shanxi as buffer zone, hindering Central Plains unification and preventing strong rivals for Youyan. Coincidentally, the newly founded Song dynasty also wished to maintain status quo. In 960 AD, Song replaced later Zhou as new Central Plains dynasty. Strategically, early Song faced dual political goals: peace and unification. After warlord conflicts of late Tang and Five Dynasties, people yearned for war's end. Yet unification required recovering Youyan, which meant inevitable war with Liao, contradicting peace objectives. To resolve this contradiction, policymakers adopted first South, then North unification strategy. Originally proposed by later Zhou minister Long Pu, this strategy advised defeating southern states first, then eliminating northern Han before reclaiming Youyan. Later, the northern Song replaced the later Zhou, and Emperor Taizong of Song, Zhao Kuangyi, also adopted Wang Pu's strategy. During the late Tang and Five Dynasties periods, frequent wars in the north caused massive social destruction, and the court's finances were severely depleted. In contrast, the southern states were relatively peaceful, with more stable societies. By conquering the south first, they could gain greater wealth to fund northern campaigns. In relations with Liao, Song also preferred maintaining the status quo to avoid large-scale military clashes. It was this shared desire to preserve the status quo that made both sides exercise restraint in border disputes. For instance, to stop Song from destroying northern Han, Liao repeatedly clashed with Song troops there, often deploying 60,000 soldiers. But in northern Hebei, where Song and Liao directly bordered each other, Liao rarely sent such large forces. Emperor Taizong of Song strengthened Hebei's defenses by dividing them into small sectors to avoid major wars with Liao. However, this restraint nearly sparked an all-out conflict. In 969 AD, Emperor Muzong of Liao died, and Emperor Jingzong succeeded him. To test Song-Liao relations, at the end of 970 AD, Liao unusually sent 60,000 cavalry to attack Song's key defense town Dingzhou in Hebei, but Song forces repelled them. This marked Liao's first deployment of a 60,000-strong army in Hebei, signaling potential escalation in Song-Liao conflicts. It seemed that relying solely on tacit understanding for the status quo, the fragile peace could vanish any time. Thus, both nations sought to formalize a treaty to clarify their peaceful standoff, leading to the Xiongju Agreement. Xiongju is today's Zone County in Hebei's Zong and New area. As a key Song border stronghold in Guanan, in March 1974 AD, while deploying troops against the south, Emperor Taizong proactively sent envoys to Liao for peace talks to prevent a sneak attack. In November that year, Liao's local general Yelu Kong wrote a letter to Song's Shanzhou administrator Sun Quanxing. The letter stated that coexistence between northern and southern regimes had always been normal. Song and Liao weren't sworn enemies, and it hoped for peaceful, equal coexistence. Yellow Kong and Sun Quanxing also met outside Shanzhou's North Gate to negotiate the peace agreement details. Soon, both governments announced the agreement's validity, exchanged diplomatic letters, and achieved history's first peace treaty, known as the Heian-Zhou Agreement. Due to lost historical records, the Shanzhou Agreement's specifics remain unknown. However, after the agreement was reached, military harassment on the border decreased a lot. Both sides also exchanged envoys to congratulate each other on important days like festivals and imperial birthdays. This pulled Song and Liao back from the brink of war. But the peaceful standoff from the Xiongju Agreement was super unstable. The core issue in Song-Liao relations was who owned the Youyan region. The Zhou Agreement just set aside the dispute. It didn't solve the problem at its root. In Emperor Taizong's unification strategy, He never gave up on reclaiming Youyan. In 9076 AD, when most separatist regimes were wiped out, ministers honored Taizong with the title Unifier of Peace, but he refused, saying, "How can we call it unified when Youyan isn't pacified?" Clearly, Song's big strategy to reclaim Youyan for full unification clashed fundamentally with Liao's strategy to keep Youyan and maintain the status quo. In October 976 AD, Emperor Taizong passed away, and Emperor Taizong took over. This put the Xianzhou Agreement's effectiveness to a tough test. Emperor Taizong had come up with two strategies to reclaim Youyan: civil unification and military unification. The civil unification involved Taizong setting up a treasury fund. He stored wealth from conquering southern states and savings from his daily frugality there. Once it hit 5 million strings of cash, he planned to use diplomacy to buy back Youyan from Liao. This idea balanced the conflict between unification and peace goals. It aimed to solve the core Song-Liao issue diplomatically within the Xianzhou Agreement's framework. If Liao refused, Taizong would use the money to recruit soldiers and reclaim Youyan through war. That was the military unification strategy. Both strategies boiled down to diplomacy first, but never rule out using force. But with Taizong's death, the civil unification strategy got shelved. Emperor Taizong ditched the Xianzhou Agreement without hesitation and went for military unification. This shift stemmed from the military beliefs of the Five Dynasties period. In Part 2, we'll see how the Five Dynasties' military beliefs led to Song's crushing defeat in their first attempt to manage Youyan, the Battle of Gaoliang River. Military beliefs are combat experiences built up from past battles. People often think this experience is right. Since Song wasn't far from the Five Dynasties, its strategy and tactics were heavily influenced by that era's military beliefs. So, early Song wars often played out like Five Dynasties conflicts. Ancient military beliefs had two key features. One was the tendency to use strategic surprise attacks. The other was that emperors often directly commanded tactical decisive battles. During the Five Dynasties era, soldiers valued martial prowess. To gain their loyalty, the emperor had to be exceptionally courageous. Thus, newly ascended emperors often personally led military expeditions. Only after winning battles could they pacify the army and solidify their rule. Emperor Taizong of Song directly inherited the throne by bypassing Taizong's sons, making his legitimacy widely doubted. He desperately needed to personally lead the army to recover Youyan, following Five Dynasties tradition, to build credibility in the military and outshine his brother, Emperor Taizong. This was the deep reason Emperor Taizong firmly chose military unification for Youyan. However, with no prior campaign experience, Emperor Taizong's military expertise was weak, leading him to heavily rely on Five Dynasties' military beliefs. Emperor Taizong decided to copy the Five Dynasties' conventional tactics, using strategic surprise attacks to seize Youyan, sudden strikes on the enemy's heartland to crush them quickly. Summer 987 AD. After conquering northern Han, Emperor Taizong promptly suggested a surprise attack on Youyan. At that time, most generals wanted rest. The army resisted immediate northern campaigns, but feared open opposition. Only senior Jin army generals publicly backed Taizong. And Qihan argued that since the Song army had just won a battle, striking now with unstoppable momentum would make seizing Youyan from Liao effortless, and they shouldn't miss this chance. In Qihan's view, Song had two advantages. First, due to the Zhumzhou Agreement, Liao wouldn't anticipate a Song attack. Second, the Song troops who just defeated northern Han were tough to mobilize. If not deployed now, future expeditions would require starting over, which is highly inconvenient.
And now, if provisions could reach Yuzhou promptly, this operation could achieve surprise.
Backed by Qihan, Emperor Taizong personally led 100,000 soldiers to swiftly charge toward Yuzhou. On the night of June 19th, Song's advance forces seized Kigo Pass at the Song-Liao frontier.
While vanguard commanders were securing Kigu Pass, Emperor Taizong had already rushed the main army across under darkness. The vanguard had to catch up after setting defenses, showing the elite troops' drive and Taizong's fervor.
He personally commanded troops at the forefront of the entire army. At the Song and River, to hasten movement, Song forces didn't use the narrow bridge. Instead, under Taizong's lead, they forded the river directly.
The Song army raced against time to break through swiftly and scored a huge success. The unprepared Liao troops either surrendered or were defeated.
Before dawn on the 23rd, Emperor Taizong of Song had already led the main force to the gates of Yuzhou, and Emperor Jingzong of Liao, who just learned of the Song army's entry, couldn't send main reinforcements in time.
That same day, Emperor Taizong personally led the Imperial Guard to crush over 10,000 Liao troops north of Yuzhou city. 2 days later, the Song army began besieging Yuzhou.
Emperor Taizong assigned 4 top generals to lead attacks on Yuzhou from the east, south, west, and north, respectively, while also setting up a reserve force southeast of Yuzhou. Led by veteran General Chao Han and others, this reserve was mobile and on standby. Emperor Taizong placed his command post west of the city, but often moved around different spots outside Yuzhou. He personally went to the main attack forces to oversee the battle. In the fierce assault, Song troops once had over 300 soldiers climb onto Yuzhou's city walls, almost capturing it and securing final victory. Only then did Liao reinforcements start arriving in batches at Yuzhou. With their forces scattered, the Liao army couldn't gather at Yuzhou's walls and had to retreat to the outskirts, with some units even pulling back to Deishongkao, near Juyang Pass, in today's Beijing suburbs. The Liao army's retreat gave Song forces total control of the battle's initiative. Not only was Yuzhou encircled like an iron barrel, but Liao commanders from nearby states also surrendered with their troops. Ordinary folks, especially Han Chinese, were super enthusiastic. Some Yuzhou residents even brought cattle and wine to the front lines to reward Song soldiers. Emperor Taizong's military surprise attack had a strong political impact. Liao rule in Yuzhou merely collapsed, showing why surprise attacks were the go-to military strategy in the 5 dynasties and early Song eras. It definitely had its perks. During the 5 dynasties, warlords and separatist regimes weren't big. They had limited war resources, shaky army morale, and were super vulnerable to political shifts. So, under these conditions, a side that lost a battle struggled to mount strong resistance, especially when surprise attacks hit political centers. Once defeated, there was no coming back.
But Liao wasn't a 5 dynasties warlord or separatist regime. It had huge territory, powerful troops, and plenty of resources, giving it a shot at regaining the initiative.
At the campaign level, the effect of strategic surprise attacks was weakened, and Song's military risks were on the rise.
This meant Emperor Taizong had to use more sophisticated tactics in his next commands to wrap up the operation fast and hit the target.
Sadly, Emperor Taizong of Song was completely unaware of this. The 2 tactical mistakes he made in a row ruined the entire campaign. On June 30th, Emperor Jingzong of Liao discussed with his generals and decided to counterattack. In early July, Liao reinforcements led by Yellow Shiji and others arrived at the outskirts of Yuzhou. On July 6th, Yellow Shi led his troops from the northwest towards Yuzhou city, where they encountered Emperor Taizong of Song, who was supervising the battle at the northwest of the city. The 2 armies quickly engaged in battle at the Gaoliang River in this area. The Song troops fought quite bravely, and the Liao forces were pushed back step by step. However, Yellow Shiji seized the opportunity to lead part of the Liao army through a mountain path from the west, circling around to the rear of the Song army. This was Emperor Taizong's first tactical mistake. He neglected to guard the mountain paths, giving Yellow Shizhu an opening, but this wasn't the deadliest error. Yellow Shige's surprise attack could still have been blocked by the Song forces. At the start of the siege, Emperor Taizong had deployed General Chao Han's troops as a reserve force. This was precisely to deal with such emergencies, but Taizong made a second tactical mistake. In his eagerness to capture Yuzhou quickly, he actually sent Cao Han's reserve force to attack the city. With no obstacles left, Yaluji immediately launched a fierce assault from the Song army's rear. Under attack from multiple Liao generals, the exhausted Song troops completely collapsed. In the chaos, Emperor Taizong was seriously wounded. That very night, he abandoned his army at Yuzhou and fled south, saving only himself. Due to his severe injuries, Taizong couldn't ride a horse and was forced to flee in a donkey cart at full speed.
Similarly injured and unable to ride, Yellow Shigu chased after him in a horse-drawn carriage. In the end, Taizong managed to escape just one step ahead. That one step meant the difference between life and death.
Today, many netizens jokingly call Emperor Taizong the Gaoliang River cart god for this very reason. At Yuzhou, the Song army, now without their emperor, retreated in chaos. The Liao defenders seized the chance to attack from the city, joining forces with the outside Liao troops to crush the Song army. Thus, Emperor Taizong's first campaign to conquer Yuzhou ended abruptly with the Song army's disastrous defeat at Gaoliang River. This crushing defeat shows that any military belief is formed under specific time and space conditions. Once those conditions change, outdated military beliefs may become ineffective. After the Battle of Gaoliang River, the Song people no longer blindly believed in the Five Dynasties strategy of surprise attacks. Emperor Taizong, who narrowly escaped death on the battlefield, never personally went to the front lines again. The military beliefs of the Five Dynasties era collapsed from then on, and the Battle of Gaoliang River became the last Five Dynasties-style war. The Song army lost over 10,000 soldiers in the Battle of Gaoliang River, but its elite main force remained intact. The biggest aftermath wasn't that Song troops became afraid to fight, but that their command system developed serious issues. Though no longer going to the front lines, Emperor Taizong refused to grant full command authority to his generals.
So he resorted to remote control from thousands of miles away, dictating everything from strategic planning to troop coordination, even down to specific unit formations.
Taizong controlled every detail. Shortly after Gaoliang River, Liao launched retaliatory attacks against Song, battling fiercely at Mancheng and Wakiawan. These battles fully exposed the new command system's massive negative impacts. First, the Battle of Mancheng, located northwest of today's Boding City in Hebei, part of the Guanan region, 1979 AD. Liao sent 100,000 troops south, while Song mobilized at least 80,000. As Song deployed defenses around Mancheng with battle imminent, they faced formation problems. Song generals based formations not on battlefield reality but on diagrams issued by Taizong, 570 kilometers away, with no combat expertise. The diagrams spread troops too far apart, making them easy targets for Liao cavalry to split and destroy. Song soldiers were terrified. Even before fighting, they'd lost morale. Generals Zhao Yanjun and Li Jilong urgently suggested changing formations, but General Kuihan worried if they lost, who'd take responsibility. Fortunately, Zhao and Li took responsibility, pledging to personally bear charges for defying orders if defeated. After their insistence, Song adopted a better formation and repelled Liao's attack. Taizong's tactical meddling nearly caused Song's defeat at Mancheng. But Song didn't always have such luck. At the Battle of Wakiawan, Taizong's remote control led to heavy Song casualties. In 980 AD, Emperor Jingzong personally attacked Wakiawan in Xianzhou. Multiple Song forces gathered there but operated independently, Only Taizong could coordinate them. Yet Taizong, while claiming to lead the expedition, hid in the rear without ever reaching the front. The absence of a frontline commander-in-chief led to fragmented Song forces fighting independently without coordination. Emperor Jingzong of Liao maintained strategic initiative while Song lagged behind. Despite 4 Song assaults being repeatedly defeated, Liao finally withdrew after fierce Song resistance. Yet the Song army was devastated, with corpses littering the battlefield. Of course, beyond causing remote command issues, the Gaoliang River defeat also pushed Song leadership toward prioritizing domestic governments as their grand strategy. The domestic first strategy went strengthening comprehensive national power through internal development first, then using that advantage to decide when to launch northern campaigns.
But due to disjointed implementation, this strategy never actually worked.
Emperor Taizong's second attempt to conquer Youyan failed even more disastrously than the first. That's what Part 3 will cover. In 980 AD, after 2 retaliatory Liao invasions, civil official Zhang Qixin memorialized that territory was secondary, while people were fundamental. Chancellor Li Feng also advised against rushing to attack Yozhou, urging them to conserve strength until fully prepared before confronting Liao. These domestic-first views represented many early Song civil officials' stance. Emperor Taizong accepted them in principle, but implementing this proved far harder than the military-focused first south, then north strategy. The domestic-first strategy required nurturing recovery to surpass Liao's national power, reducing future military risks.
But reality unfolded completely opposite.
During the brief Song-Liao truce, Lao subdued rebellious tribes in northeast China, securing their rear.
Emperor Taizong, however, busied himself consolidating power, persecuting his brother and nephews, legitimate heirs, purging Taizu's loyalists, and installing cronies. Song's socioeconomic conditions showed no real improvement. The truce actually worsened Song's position.
Yet Taizong and his inner circle mistakenly equated his secure throne with enhanced national strength.
In 986 AD, Taizong bypassed civil officials altogether, planning solely with close advisors to launch the Second Northern Expedition.
As this occurred in Yangshi Year 3, history calls it the Yangshi Northern Expedition, Taizong's second attempt to conquer Youyan.
Compared to the Battle of Gaoliang River, the Yangshi Northern Expedition had a more sophisticated design. But whether at the grand strategy level, campaign level, or tactical level, these intricate plans suffered severe strategic disconnections.
First, the very launch of the Yangshi Northern Expedition violated the grand strategy of prioritizing domestic governance and assessing national power to decide on war timing. This was a disconnection between grand strategy and campaign planning.
Second, at the campaign planning level, the tactical execution capabilities of the Yangshi Northern Expedition also fell short. According to Emperor Taizong's plan, the Song army was divided into 3 routes for the Northern Expedition against Liao: Eastern, Central, and Western. The Eastern Route Army, with 100,000 soldiers commanded by veteran General Cao Bin, was the main force. At the start of the war, the Eastern Route Army feigned an attack on Yuzhou, but marched slowly to pin down the Liao main forces in Youyan. And, meanwhile, the Central and Western Route armies exploited this to capture the Yunzhou region, then advanced eastward to join the Eastern Route Army in Yuzhou for a decisive battle against the Liao main forces, aiming to reclaim Youyan in one stroke. Emperor Taizong abandoned the heavily 5 dynasties style strategic surprise attacks and instead adopted a strategy of feinting east while striking west. This was progress. However, tactical coordination between the 2 route armies became a new challenge, exposing major problems.
Early in the Northern Expedition, the Song Central and Western Route armies achieved successive victories in the Yunzhou region, while the Eastern Route Army, acting as bait, gained nothing. This caused dissatisfaction among the Eastern Route troops, who demanded that Commander Cao Bin speed up the march.
Before the expedition, as an old general of Emperor Taizong, Cao Bin had been suppressed by Taizong for gaining the army's loyalty. Thus, he dared not discipline the troops to avoid Taizong's suspicion.
That.
With Cao Bin's indulgence, the Eastern Route Army once advanced to Zhuzhou, but after over 10 days, with insufficient supplies, the Eastern Route Army was forced to retreat to Xianzhou, then launched another campaign. After more than 20 days, they recaptured Zhuo. After all this back and forth, before any major battle, the Eastern Route troops were physically and mentally exhausted, just as they encountered the approaching, the Liao main forces from Zhuzhou, while retreating to Qigu Pass at the border, caught up with the Eastern Route Army, leading to a major collapse, with tens of thousands of soldiers killed. Amid the layered disconnections between ideal planning and actual execution, Emperor Taizong's meticulously planned Yangshi northern expedition ended abruptly with the Song army's rout. In the past, it was often thought that the failure of the Yangshi northern expedition marked the end of Song's active aggression against Youyan. In reality, shortly after the Yangshi northern expedition failed, Emperor Taizong began planning a third attempt to manage Yan. However, before this campaign could even begin, the Song army suffered a fierce attack from Liao forces and was defeated in the Battle of Junziguan, completely losing the strategic initiative. The book's final section covers how the Song army was forced into strategic defense after this defeat. Despite heavy losses in troops and supplies during the Yangshi northern expedition, Song still retained considerable elite forces with largely intact morale. Based on this, in 986 AD, the same year the Yangshi northern expedition failed, in December that year, Emperor Taizong began preparations for his third campaign against Youyan. On one hand, he planned to have General Li Jilong lead troops across the Bohai Sea to capture Yuguan Pass, today's Shanhaiguan Pass, the critical gateway from Liaodong into Yuan. By cutting off Yuguan's main route, Song could hinder eastern Liao reinforcements from reaching Youyan. On the other hand, Taizong appointed veteran General Liu Tinrong to command the main Song force against Yuzhou, with General Tian Chongjin providing flank support. Compared to Yangshi, this expedition strategy was clearly improved. Though Song's national strength remained inferior, the objective focused on retaking Yuzhou, using Yuguan capture as leverage. Campaign planning was precise, combat zones concentrated, avoiding complex multi-route coordination. Blind optimism still permeated Song ranks. Taizong vowed to annihilate the Khitan. Liu Tingrang boasted of amphibious conquest, and other generals felt certain of defeating Liao. Yet, the Song-Liao dynamic had shifted. Liao abandoned passive defense for aggressive offensives, demanding Song's transition from strategic offense to defense. Neither Taizong nor frontline generals grasped this crucial shift. In November 986 AD, Liao launched a southern invasion, seeking decisive battle with Song's main force by early December. For Liu Tingrang, commanding Song's main army, elastic defense was the optimal strategy. Elastic defense means armies don't directly defend territory. Defeating invaders achieves protection. Centered around rapidly deployable field forces, it exploits enemy weaknesses for counterattacks. Under this approach, Liu Tinrong and Li Jilong would engage Liao head-on, while Tian Chongjin's flanking force attacked their rear, highly advantageous for Song. However, elastic defense's critical requirement is highly coordinated, synchronized troop movements. This was precisely what Liu Tinrong lacked most. As in previous campaigns, Emperor Taizong appointed no theater commander-in-chief. Though commanding the main force, Lu Timrong couldn't direct Li Jilong or Tian Chongjin's troops, making coordinated elastic defense impossible. So Lu had no choice but to convince nearby Li Jilong to join a frontal assault against Liao, a fight to the death. Tian Chongjin faced similar constraints. He did attempt flank attacks and initially gained advantage, but lacking authority to coordinate, Tian couldn't synchronize with Neo Timrang. Ultimately, Tian's vanguard was defeated by Liao forces forcing retreat. Without strategic coordination, Song commanders still focused on isolated counterattacks. Song relied mainly on infantry, while Liao's corps was cavalry, giving Liao a huge shock advantage in open combat. Yet Lu Tingrang, forced into infantry versus cavalry combat, made smart tactical arrangements. First, to prevent encirclement, Lu added powerful crossbows, long-range weapons, to his formation. Crossbows effectively countered Liao cavalry, reducing frontal pressure. Second, Liao deployed cavalry on flanks and rear in hook formation to guard against side or rear attacks. Finally, most crucially, Lu organized troops in deep echelons, front and rear supporting each other, to avoid being outflanked by Liao cavalry. Specifically, Lu led the vanguard to engage Liao's main force, while elite reserves mixed with Li Jilong's troops under Li's command formed follow-up echelons. When Lu clashed with Liao's main force, Li would strike decisively. Liao cavalry excelled in charges and mounted archery, but weakened in close-quarters combat against Lu's troops. Then Li's timely counterattack, combined with Song's crossbows, could deliver a knockout blow. This deep echelon tactic was common and effective in Song's military, but like elastic defense, required perfect vanguard rear coordination, Song's fatal weakness. On December 12th, Lu Tingrang's vanguard encountered Liao forces at Junziguan. Unexpectedly, heavy snow and plummeting temperatures froze Song soldiers stiff. They couldn't even draw their bows, rendering crossbows useless. Song infantry completely lost their technological edge against Liao cavalry. Worse, the worsening weather disrupted coordinated operations. Li Jilong believed the technologically disadvantaged Song stood no chance against Liao. With Lu's defeat certain, supporting him would be suicide. Li held equal rank and authority to Lu, making him effectively independent. To preserve Song's strength, Li broke his pact with Liao, retreating to defend himself, stranding the already struggling Liao as isolated forces. Meanwhile, Liao reinforcements arrived at Junziguan and launched a fierce assault. Liu fought alone but was overwhelmed, leading to total annihilation of his troops. Tens of thousands died. Lu barely escaped back to Junziguan alone. Post-battle, Liao rampaged through Guanan unchecked. All Hebei's morale collapsed with unprecedented fear of Liao, a new low after previous defeats. Sobering realization, finally grasped the severity, adopting cautious and avoidant attitudes toward war. The previous atmosphere of underestimating enemies and eager warfare vanished completely. Soon after defeating Lu, Liao attacked Daizhou in modern Shanxi's northwest. Defending it was Zhang Qiqian, advocate of the fundamentals first strategy. Initially short on troops, Zheng requested General Pan Mei from Taiwan to join battle at Daizhou, still adopting aggressive posture. But Zhang's messenger to Pan was captured by Liao, revealing Pan's troop movement. Now, as Zhang worried about Liao ambushing Pan, Pan's messenger arrived. He reported that Emperor Taizong, learning of Junziguan's defeat, ordered Pan to abort. Pan's advancing troops had to return to Taiyuan. Zhang detained Pan's messenger to prevent another leak, then improvised. He deployed 2,000 local troops in coordinated defense, then ordered hilltop fires to create illusion of reinforcements. Seeing the fires' psychological insight, Liao mistook them for Pan's approaching army, panicked, and retreated north, straight into Zhang's ambush at Tudenjai, suffering heavy losses. Though small-scale, Tudenjai revealed Song commander's psychological shift. Faced with worsening conditions, The Song dynasty finally abandoned its aggressive northern strategy and adopted a defensive grand strategy. Under this strategy, Emperor Taizong assigned veteran generals to oversee the repair of Hebei's city walls and strengthen defenses. Gradually, Song forces regained morale and won several defensive battles, but they remained hesitant to initiate attacks, never regaining their pre-Junziguan combat eagerness. All right, that concludes the main content of Managing Yuan. So how did history unfold afterward? What moves did the Liao dynasty make? It turns out during the Song-Liao Wars, Youyan residents often showed inclinations to support Song. For Liao, the urgent priority was securing Youyan and consolidating rule in this core region. This dictated that Liao's campaigns aimed only at military deterrence and plundering wealth. Thus, after Junziguan, Liao didn't push deeper but withdrew after plundering, knowing when to stop. Militarily, this created a stalemate where neither could conquer the other. Strategically, both focused on consolidating existing territories, returning to a status quo standoff. Afterward, border clashes occurred but remained low intensity. After roughly 20 years of stalemate, in 1005 AD, Song and Liao signed the Chanyang Treaty, formally acknowledging peaceful coexistence. All right, that concludes our coverage of Managing Yuan. Reading notes are below the audio. Until next time,